We know that 90% of business activity in Africa is conducted by small and medium enterprises, and yet they're not operating at optimum level. Why is that?
Well, thank you very much. Let me start by saying that I want to bring in a little bit positive tone to this discussion. I really think that things have changed, that essentially, if you really look at what is happening now, particularly in Egypt and in Tunisia, it's those youth that have the capacity but are not employed. So the situation is not only because the capacity is not there, is that the capacity is not effectively utilized. And I think this is a major constraint to building private sector businesses and so on. And even institutions like us, and I'm being very candid here and saying that for many years we've focused on the public sector side. Now we know that public sector cannot absorb all these products of the system. Government has done a lot to meet Millennium Development Goals, to provide basic education and so on. But then so what? When you reach there, what do you do with these kids? So I think that's where we are now. Yes.
I think post-credit crisis, I mean, and I know Joseph Stiglitz has spoken about this dual economy emerging in the United States, where the bailout was for big banks.
Yes.
And yet a lot of the lending needs to be by smaller banks, specialized, focused on SMEs. There still isn't this consciousness about SMEs, and capacity means financing for SMEs, and that's still also very much the case in the African scenario.
No, yes, you're right. I think that there you have like three issues that are almost in parallel. One is the issue of availability of information. If many people look at Africa, they don't know about Africa. So instead of seeing the opportunities, they rather see the problems. So if we could tackle the issue of information availability, the information platform first, so that you know what is the type of business, what type of small enterprise exists, small businesses exist in South Africa, in Ethiopia, and in other places, it will change. That's number one. The second one is the platform for resources that you link with the whole system. How do you operate this so that you know that a small business enterprise or firm somewhere can have access to the resources? The banking system, we know, is not operating perfectly. Yeah. So, but that's the other. And then the last issue that is very critical is really how do you keep them? Because even in the small business sector, if you upscale the capacity of the people, they usually leave. So there's an issue of retention. And because all of these three factors are together, it creates a major gap there that we are trying to address.
What's the role that the African Development Institute plays, and indeed even the bank, the African Development Bank, just in terms of helping SMEs through their life cycle? Everything about startup costs, helping them with taxation, helping them access trades, helping them move to another level of evolution where maybe private equity players are coming in and wanting to take the business to a new level.
The African Development Bank is actually doing several things. The first one is that we are now focusing on the leadership. We are saying that to some extent, we need to be entering into a dialogue with the African leadership in terms of changing, understanding that private sector is good, but at the same time, understanding that there's a minimum that has to be done, like the business environment, for instance, and this is critical. Now, so we are focusing our capacity activities not only to the business community, but also to the leadership. And we're going to be running, that's why I'm here, trying to get some partnership with South African institutions, because we've always looked at institutions outside of Africa where there is, and I'm going to be talking about it later if it's possible.
Okay, yes. Kobie, and just a final comment from you. I mean, some of the biggest challenges for SMEs, obviously we've mentioned credit from banks, but also just sourcing other avenues for creative investment, venture capital, those kinds of issues.
Well, I think the biggest challenge for SMEs today in Africa is a reason for being. And that might seem, kind of this weird statement that I'm making, but government needs to create the structures in order to make an SME work, because SMEs don't have a lot of money. So they want to know that whatever the money they're going to put behind something, if they at least bring hard work to it, they're going to get some form of return on that. So government has to go and create that infrastructure. If they create the infrastructure, they create the channels, it'll happen, because most people are fairly innovative when it comes to capital raising and trying to get businesses to work, especially in Africa.
Okay, final comments from you?
Yes, let me say just two things rapidly. One is that there's an agreement that most likely Africa is going to become the next frontier market of the world. We're finding oil everywhere. You know, natural resources becoming an issue. Now, if Africa doesn't have the capacity, there's no way we can leverage those resources and then move to the second level. That's number one. Number two is that, and I really want to agree with what you said, is that if I'm a private investor from outside Africa, I want to make sure that, you know, the accounts of a small business is well done. I want to make sure that this is credible, that at the end of the day, I can trust, and then I have a legal system and all this environment that is important. That's what we are doing. That's what the African Development Bank is doing. And that's why, and I really want to mention this because we now got a gift from South Africa, if I can say. The former dean of the Wits Business School is now the chief economist at the African. He's the one who's driving this agenda.
Fantastic.
And it makes a lot of sense.
Okay, thanks so much
you.
to you, Dr. Sibry Tapsoba, who's head of the Africa Development Institution.